painting we are about to look at today is probably the most penetrating image you will see for the rest of your life, and I'm not exaggerating. In the art world, people often say there are paintings that follow you with their eyes, but this one genuinely feels like it's watching you. It grabs you, and without even knowing why, you can't stop looking at it. Franz von Stuck painted the Head of Medusa in 1892, right after he painted Lucifer, and even though the themes could not be more different, both works share that powerful gaze that feels like it cuts right through you. It's as if Medusa's eyes are coming out of the canvas. And yes, there are many depictions of Medusa throughout art history, but none of them compare to this one. Unlike other artists such as Rubens, this version doesn't need to show blood to freeze your skin. At the end of the 19th century, art began to look at women in a completely new way. For centuries, women had been portrayed as submissive and obedient, but once that started to change, they became symbols of desire, but also of destruction. Woman had turned into a figure that challenged the rules and therefore became dangerous. In French, this figure was called the Femme Fatale, and she became a true obsession for the symbolist artists of this era. Europe at that moment was transforming. Scientific advances, new ideas, and the shifting role of women were starting to question the traditional order, and that created anxiety. Many men of the time, especially in art and literature, projected those fears onto images of powerful, almost supernatural women. Not powerful in a heroic sense, but powerful in a sensual, hypnotic, and even demonic way. Figures like Salome, Judith, Lilith, or the Sphinxes, although it is debatable whether they count as women, all became central icons of this new imagination. They shared one essential trait: they were irresistible, beautiful, and to men of that period, lethal. And this is where Medusa enters the picture. Because if we talk about dangerous women, Medusa is the original, a figure who, even in Greek mythology, represented the crossing of desire and punishment. Franz von Stuck, being a true symbolist, was fully immersed in this world. He was fascinated by the darker side of the feminine. His work is filled with dominant women, piercing gazes, and wild animals. So when he decided to paint Medusa, it was not just because he was interested in mythology. It was because Medusa was the perfect symbol of everything his generation feared and desired at the same time. But there is something else to keep in mind about this painting. In the original myth, Medusa was a beautiful young woman punished by Athena and turned into a monster. Her hair became snakes and her gaze was transformed into a deadly weapon. Yet von Stuck does not paint her as a disfigured creature. Quite the opposite. He gives her perfectly human features with a disturbing beauty and an expression caught somewhere between fury and sadness. Now, Franz von Stuck was not the first symbolist to explore the face of Medusa. Arnold Böcklin did it before him, another giant of European symbolism and a true master at creating unsettling atmospheres. Böcklin's version is more sinister in a way. Her head seems to float in the shadows, trapped between life and death. She does not look at the viewer. Her gaze is lost, as if she carried centuries of curse and solitude. Her face is almost ghostly. The snakes barely seem to move. Everything in that painting feels muted, as if it were about to fade into darkness, and that contrasts directly with what von Stuck does. Because von Stuck does not give her that shadowy treatment. He places her at the center, bright, defiant, fully awake. His Medusa stares straight at you, as if she already knows you're going to fall. The snakes are alive, tangled, full of movement, and her face is not monstrous at all. On the contrary, it is beautiful, hypnotic. When we think of it that way, we could say that Böcklin portrays Medusa as a defeated victim, while von Stuck turns her into a symbol of power, direct and at the same time dangerous. Each one says something different, and together they show us how a single myth can be completely transformed in the hands of different artists. Which one do you connect with the most? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to see what everyone thinks. But this does not end here, because years later Franz von Stuck would paint Medusa again, this time through the eyes of her killer. Before we continue with the analysis of this painting, I would like to take a few seconds to remind you that if you would like to have any of these paintings in your home, you can buy them from our website. Just as in the video you are watching right now, with our reproductions, you can start your own art collection and turn your home into your own personal museum. Shipping is free worldwide, and by the time you are watching this video, the Black Friday offer is surely still active, so you will have a 20% discount across the entire store. The offer will end in a few hours, so if you are thinking about buying your favorite painting, this is the best moment to do it. You will find a link in the description to place your order. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel by buying from the store. And now, let us continue. Years after Franz von Stuck painted the face of Medusa, exactly 16 years later, he returned to the myth. But this time, he did not portray her alone. Now we see her beside her executioner, displayed like a trophy. In 1908, von Stuck painted Perseus with the head of Medusa, a work completely different from the earlier one. This time, we are no longer facing a chilling portrait. Now there is movement, there is tension, and there is an entirely new story behind it. It feels as if we are witnessing the continuation of his previous painting. In this scene, Perseus uses Medusa as his weapon. He holds her with his arm extended and covers his face in desperation to avoid, at all costs, meeting Medusa's gaze. On the other side stands his enemy, Phineus, who begins to turn to stone. Phineus had been the former fiancé of Andromeda, the woman Perseus rescued from the sea monster. When Perseus returned with her, Phineus burst into the banquet, demanding what he believed belonged to him. He refused to accept being replaced and sought revenge. A battle then broke out. Perseus, outnumbered, had one final card to play, the head of Medusa. He raises it, exposes it, and one by one, his attackers are turned to stone. Phineus, trying to avoid his fate, also covers his face, but it is already too late. The most interesting part is that even though Perseus is the protagonist of the story, all the force of the scene still comes from Medusa. The severed, lifeless head remains the visual focus of the composition. Von Stuck paints her with an open mouth, glassy eyes, and an expression that is not entirely terror, but something closer to surprise. As for the colors, von Stuck uses cool tones here, greens and blues that appear frequently throughout his work, with pale highlights that give the image a supernatural atmosphere. It is a completely different choice from his earlier portrait of Medusa, and it shows how his interpretation of the myth evolved over time. And even though this second painting is my personal favorite, it is very likely that we will never see it in person. It currently belongs to private collectors, and it will probably remain that way for the rest of history, accessible to only a very small number of people. It is a real shame not to be able to look this gaze in the eyes, yet I am sure that many of you would be terrified to stare at it for too long. Even if we know it is only a painting, there is something in us that reacts when we see it. It feels as if something very ancient or very human switches on the moment we face it. You truly feel as if you are looking at something you are not supposed to stare at so directly.